Hello everyone. Tonight we're going to slip beneath the folds of felt and time into a night that smells of horses, boiled mutton, and cold air that numbs your eyelashes before you've even stood up. You're lying under layers of sheepskin in a round tent, no wider than a city apartment kitchen, and yet this tent could feed an entire cavalry unit by noon. Welcome to the Mongolian steppe. It's still dark, your breath is visible, and the only light comes from the soft orange coal glow under the iron hearth. You don't know what time it is. Time doesn't matter here, the stars do. And tonight, you may not survive this, because you've been summoned to serve the morning table of the Queen, not as a guest, as one of her dishwarmers. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. And let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Now, turn off the lights, let the gentle hum of the fan surround you, and let yourself quietly drift into tonight's story. Your hands ache from sleeping in curled fists. You unfurl them and wince. You reach for your outer robe, still stiff with last night's cooking smoke. The fire has almost died out. One of the older women is already up, kneeling by the hearth with a long iron poker and a prayer half mumbled in her throat. She doesn't look at you, but you know better than to speak. Here, silence is a kind of respect. It also keeps you alive. Outside the tent, the cold doesn't just bite. It nips clean through the seams of your boots. And you'll walk 200 paces to the Queen's tent in darkness, carrying a sealed pot of boiled water in both hands like it's a sacred offering. Because it is. The queens of the Mongol Empire didn't sit on thrones made of gold. They sat on furs, under yak hair canopies, surrounded by the scent of dried milk and horse sweat. And yet, somehow, they ran half the world. This morning, like so many mornings in Mongol history, you are not here for your own hunger. You are here for hers. She won't say a word to you. She doesn't need to. Her silence is instruction. Her glance is command. The bowl you offer must be held with 2 hands, not 1. You must not speak unless spoken to, and you must never, ever look at her food directly. It's not because it's cursed. It's because it's sacred. The yurt is larger than yours and warmer. It smells like roasted barley, old leather, and the faint floral sweetness of fermented mare's milk, irag, the morning staple. You kneel just inside the threshold, waiting for the nod. And when it comes, you shuffle forward, elbows tucked, back straight, head slightly bowed. You are not nobility. You are not even visible. The Queen is sitting cross-legged on a stacked cushion of red felt, her robe embroidered with wolves and suns. She's not old, but her eyes make you feel younger than you are. They do not blink. She does not cook. She does not wash. But everything in the camp, down to the coarseness of the flour and the color of the pepper, is decided by her. She reaches for the pot. You do not let go until she takes it. This too is ritual. And in that moment, your hands are only inches apart, her rings colder than your knuckles, and you realize something that doesn't quite sit right. She hasn't eaten in days. This is not a fast of starvation, it's a fast of power. Historians still debate whether Mongol queens abstained from meals before major political decisions because they believed it gave them clarity. or because no one dared interrupt their fasting with facts. Either way, you will see today unfold as though it's moving underwater, slowly, ritualistically, with weight in every breath. You step backward, still facing her, and bow once before exiting. The flap closes behind you, and your breath fogs up instantly again. You're dismissed. The rest of the day will be a silent choreography of stewing, boiling, grinding, fermenting, drying, counting, and boiling again. Queens did not stir the pots, but their memory was in every ladle. Every turn of the spoon echoed with decisions made behind curtains, under stars, beside fires that never seemed to go out. Some nights you'll dream of those fires, some nights of her, because queens on the step didn't command with armies. They commanded with hunger, with absence, with quiet. And if you ever doubted their power, you only had to look at the way the pot boiled slower when they weren't hungry. You wake again, not because you slept, but because sleep here isn't what you remember it to be. It's more like a series of shallow breaths taken under layers of felt, each one careful not to invite the cold too far in. The sky is still ink black outside, but the camp is stirring. You can hear the shuffle of hooves, the low creak of cartwheels being shifted, and the occasional clink of a ladle against an iron pot. The camp doesn't sleep either. It waits. In the Queen's yurt, the fire has already been stoked. You're summoned not by a voice, but by the sudden appearance of a younger servant girl, who looks at you with those unreadable eyes children sometimes have when they've grown up too fast. She says nothing. You follow. Inside, the air is thick with steam, and something that smells vaguely of boiled onions, though you're almost certain onions aren't part of this morning's table. Mongolian cuisine wasn't built on flavor. It was built on sustenance and subtle control. And here, in this high-domed silence, you feel every ounce of that weight. The Queen is already seated, her posture the same as yesterday and the day before that. Spine perfectly straight, shoulders relaxed, eyes soft but unblinking. She doesn't look at you as you enter. She doesn't have to. The table has been arranged before her, not with pomp or silver, but with bowls of carved wood, careful heaps of dried cheese curds, and strips of sun-dried lamb folded into near geometric shapes. This is what a table set in silence looks like. You and 3 others begin laying out the rest. Boiled grains, a copper pot of lightly salted tea, a dish of wild berries pressed into a kind of paste, half medicine, half ritual. No one speaks, not even the wind. And yet here everything is being said. The queens of the Mongol Empire didn't shout orders across battlefields or address courts with speeches. They chose what was eaten, who sat where, how many cups of airag were poured. They used meals as code and silence as punctuation. Take this morning, for instance. The Queen lifts her spoon 3 times, but never brings it to her mouth. To an outsider, it's a pause, a moment of indecision. But to those who know her, it's a signal, a refusal, a warning. There will be no discussion of marriage alliances today. The girl next to you places a bowl of curd with trembling fingers. She's new. The Queen does not glance, but you see it. A flicker, a nearly imperceptible twitch of one eyelid. You wonder if that bowl will still be there tomorrow. Historians still debate whether these breakfast rituals were a form of passive diplomacy or deeply encoded communication, perhaps both. What's known is that Mongol queens held influence far beyond the hearth. They dictated the rhythm of imperial expansion and domestic peace without ever leaving the camp. And they did it with a bowl and a spoon. You find your hands smoothing out the tablecloth again and again, even though it's already flat. It's a habit, your way of blending in. The cloth is wool, embroidered with thread so fine it must have come from the imperial looms. The patterns mean something, of course. They always do. Spirals for fertility, birds for memory, a jagged mountain motif that might mean defiance or simply good weather, depending on who you ask. No one ever asks the queens. They just watch what they eat, or don't. On a low shelf behind her, jars are lined up by height, sealed with beeswax and cotton strings. Inside are not just ingredients, but decisions. There's the sour plum syrup used in winter to warm the blood, the smoked garlic paste that hasn't been touched since last year's failed treaty, and the powdered milk thickened with crushed herbs, only served to guests of equal rank. The queen gestures lightly, a hand turned palm down toward the pot nearest to her. A dish is placed before her. She tastes it. The room exhales. There is no applause, no nod of approval, just the simple fact that she has eaten. And in that gesture, a dozen decisions are made. You wonder what it's like to be her, to wake not with the ache of cold, but with the weight of invisible decisions, to rule without a council, to speak without a word. You've heard stories of the older queens, the ones who trained the young with nothing but the slowness of their chewing. There's one tale, often whispered by the fire, about a queen who once settled a tribal feud simply by placing her own bowl on the ground and walking away from it. The message was clear. This table no longer welcomes war. Today, the queen eats exactly 6 spoonfuls of broth, no more, no less. Then she places her spoon beside the bowl and stands. Everyone else follows. Outside, the day has barely begun, but something has shifted. The merchants will pack their goods differently. The herders will move their flocks in a new direction. The diplomats will wait another day to make their appeals, because this morning the queen didn't finish her tea. And that silence, well, it speaks louder than any decree. You're not allowed to speak during the meal, of course, but no one said anything about thinking, and your thoughts, well, they're loud. You're thinking about how a tent made of felt and rope can somehow hold more power than any stone fortress. You're thinking about the way the queen raised one eyebrow slightly when the tea was poured from the left instead of the right. And you're thinking about how strange it is that she hasn't touched the dumplings. Again. In the Mongol steppe, queens were both seen and unseen, present in every decision, yet rarely addressed directly. They moved like shadow puppeteers behind daily rituals, guiding an empire one boiled organ at a time. It's just breakfast, you think. But it isn't. Not really. This table is a council. These spoons are declarations. And that untouched dumpling, a veto. Today, a guest arrives. You know this because an extra stool has been placed beside the queen's seat, half a pace lower, covered in black felt instead of crimson. That's the only announcement there'll be. No trumpets, no names, just stool color. The guest is a cousin of someone powerful. You can tell by his gait. too confident for someone who knows how easily he can be replaced. He enters with that strange city boy swagger, the kind that tries to disguise awe with arrogance. He bows too fast. The queen doesn't blink. She nods once. A bowl is placed before him. He sniffs it. Mistake. Queens don't serve mystery broth to be questioned. You can feel the temperature drop. He raises the bowl, sips, then smiles. Another mistake. In Mongol etiquette, smiling during the first taste implies critique. The room stills. Even the fire seems to go quiet. Then the queen, without looking up, places her spoon down beside her bowl and folds her hands. That's it. That's the whole gesture. But you know, and everyone else in the yurt knows, that this meal is over. Not just the meal, his chances. He'll leave with a polite nod, probably say something about the fine aroma, but the deal he came to offer will melt in the cold outside. You'll never see him again. You keep your hands busy, refolding a napkin that hasn't moved. The silence is heavier now. Historians still debate whether these table interactions were rehearsed power plays or simply an evolved form of survival behavior. After all, if your power depended on never raising your voice, you learned to raise eyebrows instead. The queen stands. So do you. She walks to the exit flap and pauses, not to look back, but to breathe in. Her eyes close briefly. She exhales slowly. This, too, is part of the ritual, a release of judgment, a cleansing of the air. Outside, the sky has turned that hard silver blue it gets just before snow. You brace for cold, but it doesn't come, not yet. The queen's staff begins to collect the bowls. You help, carefully. Each dish is handled as though it might explode, and in a way, it might. Because the wrong dish, served at the wrong time, to the wrong person, could ignite more than just tempers. It could start wars. You've heard of the Feast of No Return, a gathering decades ago where a chieftain was served a cold lamb's eye on the wrong side of the table. He took it as an omen. He wasn't wrong. A month later, his camp vanished, burned in a night raid no one claimed. Some say it was a punishment. Others say it was mercy. You don't ask. You dry the queen's bowl with the hem of your own sleeve. No cloth, no chatter. Just the soft hush of routine. Because here, every meal is a message, and you are the courier who carries it without words. Later, when the sun breaks through the tent seams, you'll be back in your own yurt, kneading dough for flatbread and listening for the soft whistle that signals the queen's mood has shifted. But for now, you kneel, you clean, and you think, again, about how you'll never know what decisions were made today. You'll just know that something has changed. The queen didn't eat the dumpling. That means something. You just don't know what. Not yet. You wake to the scent of milk burning, not the acrid scent of ruin. No, this is deliberate, a slow scorch on purpose. The queen's morning meal today begins with milk scalded until it browns, then whisked with salt and pounded rice flour into something that walks the line between porridge and declaration. Your eyes are sticky with smoke, your fingertips already numb despite the gloves, and as you rub warmth back into them, you remember, today is not a normal day. A meal is being prepared for no guests. That in itself is the message. No guest, no audience, no performance, only presence. The tent is quieter than usual. Even the goats outside seem to understand that noise today would be impolite. You enter with your hands carrying bowls like they hold flame. The queen is seated as always, but today she is dressed in white. The kind of ceremonial white that suggests no celebration, only observance. You place the bowls down with care, one in front of her, two to her sides, a third at the opposite end of the felt cloth. It's empty, intentionally. That space belongs to someone no longer here. You've seen this before. It's a meal of absence, a kind of mourning, but not for the dead, for the missing, for the disappeared. It's the lost dinner, the one meant to welcome someone who never arrived, or chose not to, or was forbidden. The tea is poured, only half a cup this time. The spoons rest atop the bowls, unlifted. No one eats, no one drinks. It's all ritual. And yet it carries weight you can barely hold in your chest. Historians still debate whether these empty table meals were mourning customs or subtle political messages to wandering allies. What's clear is that they had rules. Rules so old no one remembers when they began, only that breaking them would bring shame louder than any curse. The queen lifts her spoon, dips it once, sets it down again. She does not eat. Her eyes flicker to the empty bowl across from her, and for a moment her face is soft, not weak, not open, but soft in the way mountains are when veiled in mist. You realize then that this isn't about hunger. It's about holding space, about saying with food what can't be said aloud. A boy beside you sneezes. The sound cracks the air like dry twigs. He turns pale. Everyone looks down. The queen's eyes remain on the bowl. She does not flinch. That is mercy. The boy will remember it for the rest of his life. Maybe he'll become a cook. Maybe he'll never enter the queen's tent again. But the silence after that sneeze will stay with him like snow in his lungs. After the meal, if you can even call it that, comes the cleaning. But no one dares remove the empty bowl. It must stay for a full day and a full night, untouched. To do otherwise would be to erase the memory it holds. And in Mongol custom, memory is survival. You kneel outside later, watching steam rise from the pot you're scrubbing. The wind lifts the edge of the tent, letting in just enough light to catch the edge of the queen's shadow. She hasn't moved, still facing the bowl, still listening for someone who will not arrive. And you wonder, is this how empires are built? Not with armies or speeches, but with quiet bowls left untouched. You think about the name you've never heard spoken aloud, the one this meal is for. Was it a sister? A friend? A rival? A daughter? The queen gives no hint. She is a still pond. But you know better than to think stillness means peace. Sometimes stillness is the greatest storm of all. The queen rises. The meal is over. Nothing was eaten. And yet, something enormous has been said. Today begins not with fire, but with fat. You're crouched beside a low wooden bench, cutting thick slabs of frozen yak butter with a dull bronze blade that squeaks with every push. The butter's as cold and stubborn as iron. It doesn't want to yield, but it must, because today the queen will assert her quiet power with dairy. You think it sounds absurd until you've seen it done. Butter isn't just food here. It's currency, symbolism, and statecraft rolled into one. A pot of clarified yak butter can sway a marriage negotiation more surely than any dowry. It can preserve meat, light lamps, cure wind-chapped skin, or grease 100 ceremonial hinges. And more importantly, it can send a message. The queen has ordered a triple batch of butter-roasted millet for today's midday meal. That alone is a statement. It means she intends to feed more than just the body. It means someone important is coming, or being reminded they're not. You work quickly, hands raw, eyes squinting against the smoke curling from the camp's central cooking fire. The mixture begins with toasted grains, a slow pour of milk, then in goes the butter, spoon after spoon, a golden waterfall that hisses and sighs when it meets the heat. The scent is unreal, rich, dense, comforting, and strangely authoritative. The yurt smells like memory and power. When it's done, it's portioned with exacting care. 9 bowls, 3 for the inner circle, 2 for outer attendants, 1 for the queen, and the others? Strategic. One will go to a rival chieftain's daughter recently, invited to reside nearby. Another to the messenger, who carried bad news last week, because punishment here sometimes looks like generosity. The last goes to no one. It's set aside, covered in fine wool, and placed on a low platform beside the queen's seat. That's the negotiation bowl. No one touches it unless the queen lifts the cover herself. If she does, it means talks will begin. If she doesn't, well, they won't. You've seen her leave that bowl untouched for 3 days straight once. The recipient gave up and left the camp without a word. Historians still debate whether such bowls were literal or symbolic, but you've seen their power. You've carried them. They're heavier than they look. The queen arrives quietly. She does everything quietly. Even the way she lifts her robe to kneel is deliberate, like a page turning in a book no one dares interrupt. She takes her seat. The bowls are placed. You watch her eyes scan the table like a general studying a battlefield. Her gaze lingers on the covered one. You wait. Everyone waits. Then, without a sound, she reaches forward, lifts the wool, and reveals the negotiation bowl. A ripple moves through the yurt, though no one speaks. A decision has been made. Someone will be summoned. Someone will be heard. You feel it in your chest, like the click of a lock turning. The queen picks up her spoon and eats. That, too, is a message. Not just that the food is worthy, but that she is nourished enough to face what comes next. Her attendants follow suit. You're not allowed to eat, of course, but you know this dish by scent and sound. You know how it coats the tongue and lingers in the throat. You know how a second spoonful means agreement. A third? Enthusiasm. The queen stops at 2. Perfect. No more, no less. The meal ends. The bowls are removed in reverse order, lowest rank to highest. The negotiation bowl stays, unfinished. That's part of it too. Leaving some behind means there's still work to be done. Outside, the wind picks up. The yurt flaps twitch. Somewhere far off, a dog barks and a child laughs. But here inside, all remains still until the queen speaks. It's just one word, a name. The name of the envoy she's agreed to hear. You feel your skin prickle. It's the first time she's spoken aloud all day, and that one word carries more weight than 1,000 scrolls. You begin collecting dishes. Your hands tremble a little, not from fear, but from the echo of power, because you've just witnessed something vast, an entire political strategy, cooked, stirred, and served in a wooden bowl, and all of it centered around butter. The stew is already simmering when you arrive, bubbling lazily in a thick bronze pot suspended over low coals that glow like the last breath of a fading star. The scent is rich, bone broth, wild herbs, and fatty lamb. But it isn't the stew that catches your attention. It's the absence of noise. A silence not of emptiness, but of focus. Because today, the queen will host no banquet, no diplomatic guest, no symbolic absence. Today is for remembering Berte Khatun, the first and only wife of Genghis Khan. The woman who held the tent when the future emperor vanished into the mountains with nothing but a dream and a wounded horse. The woman whose kitchen became the first imperial court. You don't say her name aloud, of course. Not here, not unless instructed. But you know what today means. The stew isn't for eating, it's for honoring. Each year, on the same day, the queen prepares a version of Berta's reconciliation stew, a meal of forgiveness and fire, offered first to the ancestors, then to the earth, and only finally to the living. And it's your job to stir it, slowly, clockwise, never changing direction. 3 rotations, then pause. 3 again. And if your hand tires, too bad. You don't stop. The queen hasn't entered yet. She's outside, likely facing east, offering her silence to the sun. The tent flaps are closed. The air is warm and heavy with steam. You stir, you sweat, you think about how Berta once held the entire future of Mongolia in her lap while grinding garlic with a stone, about how her dowry included 2 oxen, a fur cloak, and her father's silent warning not to trust anyone without calloused hands. Historians still debate how much direct power Berta wielded, but in every version of the story, she is there. Calm, alert, never loud, always decisive. When Genghis fled after his early defeat, it was Berta who received the messengers, who rationed the meat, who ordered that no one panic. When he returned, she did not ask questions. She offered him stew. And from that moment, the empire began. That stew was always made the same way. Fatty tail meat, bitter root vegetables, a splash of fermented mare's milk, and 3 drops of rendered bear fat, if available. You've never tasted it. You're not allowed. But you know its story like scripture. You stir, clockwise, 3 times. Pause, again. The queen enters. No announcement, just presence. She kneels beside the pot, not touching, only watching. You feel the heat of her attention more than the coals. She waits. You finish your next set of rotations. Then, with a gesture, she relieves you. You bow low, grateful, your arms aching, your mind oddly quiet. She takes the spoon, and for the next hour she stirs. The tent holds its breath. Every turn of the spoon is a memory. Every bubble that rises is a lesson. Berta taught loyalty not with speeches, but with repetition, with rituals that reminded people of what they already knew. That food is trust. That warmth is protection. That silence is strength. When the stew is ready, it's ladled into 3 bowls. 1 for the altar outside, 1 for the hearth within, and 1 for the queen. No one else eats. This is not a communal meal. It's communion. The altar bowl is placed on a raised stone and left to the wind. The hearth bowl is placed beside the fire to feed the flame. And the queen's bowl? She holds it but doesn't drink. She lifts it to her lips, then sets it down. A gesture of presence, not consumption. And with that, the ritual is complete. The rest of the stew will be buried in the earth at dusk. Never thrown, never wasted, never repurposed. You've buried it before. The ground is always softest just beneath the west-facing slope. You begin gathering your tools. The queen has already left, her task complete. Outside, the camp stirs again. Children run, hooves clatter. A herder yells something cheerful. But inside your chest, something stays still. Berta never returned to the battlefield. She never wore armor, but her spoon stirred revolutions. Her stew kept an empire from collapsing. And today, as the scent of her legacy still hangs in the air, you understand why. Power isn't always loud. Sometimes it simmers. You're kneeling in the corner of the tent, rolling strips of dried root between your palms to soften them when you hear it. That sharp scrape of a ladle against the side of a bowl, followed by an unmistakable pause. That's not a sound of someone eating. That's the sound of someone sending a message. The queen is seated at the head of the hearth again, same as every day. But today her gaze is lowered, her shoulders still, and her bowl remains untouched after just one spoonful. The message is clear. She's displeased, but not with the food, with someone, something. You feel it ripple through the room like an invisible wind. The air thickens. Everyone lowers their heads just slightly. You follow instinct more than instruction, carefully retreating to the supply baskets and checking the bundles of herbs, as if looking busy might somehow shield you from the storm you can't see but definitely feel. The stew today is a basic one. Mutton, spring onions, turnip. There's nothing ceremonial about it, nothing diplomatic, which means the ritual being performed isn't about the ingredients, it's about the act. Today is a lesson, a quiet performance. The queen's teaching someone something, and she's doing it with a spoon, not through words, never through words. You've seen her do it before, refusing to eat when a lower chieftain made a request too bold, offering an extra bowl when she wanted an alliance deepened. Sometimes a bowl comes back half full, meaning uncertainty. Sometimes it's scraped dry, meaning approval. And sometimes, like today, it's left nearly untouched, ladle resting against the rim like a weapon she chose not to use. Historians still debate whether these silent gestures were premeditated or instinctual, but you've lived inside this rhythm long enough to know they are deliberate. Every bite is strategy. Every pause is loaded. You hear a throat clear. One of the attendants shifts her weight nervously. The queen's spoon remains down. She picks up a napkin and folds it. Slowly, precisely. Then folds it again. You recognize the pattern. The triangle with a crease down the center. It's the symbol for restraint. An old code, passed from queen to queen, long before the men wrote laws. You don't know who it's meant for today, but you know they'll get the message. The kitchen has grown so quiet that even the softest movements feel like thunderclaps. You tiptoe to the back of the tent, pretending to check on the storage jars. You glance back. The queen is now holding a small ceramic dish of vinegar. She lifts it to eye level, peers at it, and sets it back down without a drop spilled. Another signal. Vinegar is only tasted when making decisions that sour easily. Inheritance debates, land ownership, prisoner exchanges. Which means someone's fate is being weighed today, spoon by spoon, drop by drop. You think of the time the queen added vinegar to a soup and sent it directly to the advisor who'd betrayed her confidence. That advisor was gone the next morning. Not punished, just gone. His tent cleared, his name never spoken again. The queen finally raises her spoon again. She stirs the broth without drinking. Once, twice, then places it down again. This is patience. This is control. This is theater, but also truth. The queens of the Mongol Empire ruled from within the invisible space between flavor and silence, and they were feared not for their rage, but for their restraint. You begin preparing the next course, but you hesitate. Should it be light, heavy, sweet, salty? Each choice carries meaning, and a wrong choice could ripple outward. You choose barley cakes with honey, a safe dish, gentle, concluding. You place it near her without comment, watching the queen from the corner of your eye. She doesn't look at it. Not yet. She lifts her napkin again, unfolds it slowly, then wipes the rim of her bowl. A rare gesture. It means the lesson is over. Her judgment has been made. The decision is sealed, whatever it was. She reaches for the barley cake, breaks a piece, places it in her mouth, chews once, twice, swallows. The room exhales. The balance has returned. You don't know what just happened, but you do know who still sits in power and how. Not by shouting, not by threats, but with the quiet refusal of a second spoonful. You wake before the sky lightens, before the goats begin their complaints, before the campfire smoke has even risen into its first curl. Today, your task begins with the stars, not in poetry, but in practice. Because Mongol queens don't just rise with the sun, they often beat it. And when they plan a meal by the stars, you follow. The queen has ordered her breakfast to align with the constellation Tamir, a pattern only visible in the early spring hours before dawn. You don't ask why, you just obey. Because cooking by the stars isn't superstition here, it's strategy. The alignment determines not just the timing, but the ingredients, the sequence, the silence. Today's constellation signals renewal, which means goat's milk warmed but not boiled, flatbread with exactly 7 caraway seeds, and a fruit compote using last year's dried apricots, soaked overnight in fermented tea. You're told to prepare it all in a single line. No circles, no clutter, no repetition. The queen believes repetition during a Tamir alignment invites stagnation, so you sharpen your motions. Lay each item only once. No second guesses. No retracing. The tent is dark but glowing. The stars outside like frost embedded in silk. You feel the weight of centuries pressing into your shoulders as you knead the dough and whisper the prayer to keep it from cracking. When the queen enters, she brings with her a wind. Not literally, but somehow, the flap lifts on its own. The smoke shifts direction. The coals brighten. She wears gray today, soft wool, embroidered only at the collar, her face unreadable. But you've learned that's never the same as unfeeling. She sits. No one else does. You set the plate before her in a straight line, precisely 12 finger widths from the edge of the rug. The compote goes at the top, the bread at the base, the milk in between. A constellation mirrored in food. She studies it, does not eat, not yet. She waits for the sky, for the real stars to begin their retreat, for the shape of Tamir to dissolve in the light. And only then, only when the heavens turn their face, does she lift a spoon. Historians still debate whether this star-based dining was genuine astrological belief or a symbolic way of marking time without clocks. But you've seen it too many times to doubt its effect. Meals eaten under Orion were always salty. Meals under Egan were always sour. Today's sweetness is intentional. The queen eats a bite of the apricot, then another, then pauses. She lifts the spoon toward the milk, dips it, stirs twice, drinks. Then she does something unusual. She breaks the bread in half and offers one piece to the girl seated farthest from the hearth, a quiet, thin child who rarely speaks. No words are exchanged, just the bread, passed hand to hand, like a secret. The girl takes it, nods, eats. You feel something in the room shift, a bond sealed, or maybe a future chosen. There is no ceremony louder than kindness here, and no reward greater than being noticed by the queen. You continue preparing tea for the second course, heart beating louder than the ladle's swirl. The queen sips, looks up at the tent's central beam, then closes her eyes. You think she's remembering something. Maybe a mother who once cooked this same compote. Maybe a night years ago when Tamir aligned and someone important never came back. You don't ask. You pour more tea. The day begins, but slower than usual. Everyone moves gently, deliberately. A camp breathing in rhythm with the stars. You'll talk about this morning later. Not in words, but in the way you serve the compote again next time. In the way you fold the napkin differently when Tamir rises. The queen finishes her meal, wipes her fingers with a damp cloth, stands. The stars are gone now, but the pattern remains. In the plates, in the crumbs, in the silence. You clear the table slowly, as if afraid to erase it too soon. Because this wasn't just a breakfast, it was a map. Today is loud before it's even light. Pots are clanging, goats are yelling, and someone outside has already dropped a sack of barley with enough force to rattle the bones of the earth. You're elbow deep in raw lamb fat, trying to separate connective tissue with a knife so dull it might as well be a spoon. The tent smells like iron and smoke and nerves, because today's meal isn't about peace, it's about challenge. And nothing challenges more than soup. Not just any soup. Stew thickened until it walks. A battle of taste and texture. A contest of salt and timing. You're not cooking for diplomacy. You're cooking to win. The queen is hosting what the camp calls, only half jokingly, the battle of the soup pots. 2 teams, 2 stews, 1 message. No declaration of contest, no judge. Just bowls placed, tasted, and left to speak for themselves. The winner will be known by the silence that follows. Historians still debate whether these culinary showdowns were formalized rituals or spontaneous expressions of status. You've learned not to doubt either theory. Today's opponent is a well-born niece of the queen, a woman with sharper cheekbones than alliances and a reputation for broth that could melt the resolve of a general. You're part of the queen's team, which means everything you do matters more than you'd like. The fire won't catch. The fat is too soft. The onions refuse to brown, and yet you move forward, hand steady, pretending you know how to fight with flavor. Your stew is simple: lamb shoulder, wild garlic, crushed millet, and dried plum for a surprise note of sweetness. You stir it clockwise, always clockwise. The queen tastes it once, silent, adjusts nothing. That's either good or fatal. You've seen her win with less. You've also seen her lose and smile. Losing is allowed, but losing without purpose, that's forbidden. The niece's pot smells bold, stronger spices, roasted marrow, a finish of mountain herbs imported from the northern passes. She's making a statement. You're making a memory. The stews are ladled into matching bowls, placed side by side. The queen sits. Her niece sits. Neither looks at the other. They sip. 1 spoon, another. Pause. Then the queen sets her bowl down. So does the niece. The bowls are not returned to the servers. That's the signal. The stews will be judged by the camp itself. One by one, the attendants approach. Each takes a spoonful from one bowl, then the other. No words, no nods, only gestures. A bowl lifted slightly higher when set back down. A longer pause before reaching for the second. You can't read their faces. You stop trying. The queen does not watch. She drinks tea instead, with the expression of someone who has already moved on. When the last spoon is placed down, there is no applause, no ceremony, just the clearing of the bowls. And here's how you know the queen has won. The pot is empty, not scraped, not cleaned, but empty. The attendants returned for seconds. Silently. You feel it in your chest, that small, private victory. No gloating, no celebration, only the warmth of quiet affirmation. Later, in the queen's yurt, the leftover ingredients are packed away with care, not a drop wasted. The niece passes through the tent on her way back to her own quarters. She pauses, bows, and the queen nods, barely, a gesture of grace, not gloating. You go to wash the ladles. Your fingers smell like garlic and ash. Your back aches, but your spirit hums. The stew is gone. The message is sent. The queen spoke with salt and silence, and her voice was heard. The sun hasn't fully risen, and already there's the clatter of bones on bronze, the slap of dough against stone, and the faint hum of a song no one remembers the words to. You're standing near the stew pots again, but today is different. Today the air is thick with steam and legacy, because today you serve under the shadow of Turagene Khatun. She ruled an empire, not beside a Khan, in place of one. For 5 years, she sat at the center of the Mongol world while her son's claim to the throne took shape like bread under a slow fire. And she did it all from behind a curtain of steam and soup bones. This morning, you prepare the ritual broth known only as the regent's table. The recipe is ancient, murky. There are no fixed amounts, only feel. Marrow bones simmered for hours, goat stomach lining cleaned and scored, dried rhubarb to cut the richness, and wild chives, sliced so fine they float like threads in the surface shimmer. The kitchen is fuller than usual. Everyone wants to be near this memory. Even those who weren't yet born, when stories of Turagena were whispered, now feel the pull. Historians still debate how much real power she held, but no one denies the reach of her influence. It was her table that united divided factions, her stew that opened conversations no messenger could. And it was said that if you dined with her and received the second ladle, you were already half promised land. You arranged the bowls in a triangle, an old imperial shape. The queen enters, slow, deliberate, her robe trailing with stitched falcons at the hem. She does not sit immediately. She stands behind her bowl, looks at it, lets the steam rise and kiss her face. This is the moment of invocation. Not prayer exactly, but close. She's calling the past into the present. You bow lower than usual. The first ladle is served. Rich, dark, fragrant. The queen tastes. No words, only a nod. Then she gestures. One bowl to be taken to the historian who has recently returned from the border camps. Another to be delivered to the northern envoy, whose loyalty is as thin as stretched milk. The third bowl she keeps for herself. The power is distributed now. 3 directions, 3 answers. You move carefully. These bowls are not food. They are policy. You carry one to the outer tent where the envoy waits. His eyes widen at the smell. He accepts it without question. Later, you will hear he has agreed to terms that seemed impossible the day before. Back inside, the queen eats slowly, each sip a reminder that she controls the tempo. The camp's rhythm shifts around her. Outside, plans are changing. Horses are being saddled for different destinations. A new path is being carved, not with orders, but with broth. After the meal, the queen does something rare. She writes a single line on a strip of bark paper, then places it under the now empty bowl. The message isn't for now, it's for later. For someone who will lift that bowl and find not just the taste of meat and root, but memory and instruction. You clean the pot with reverence. The bones are not discarded. They're wrapped in cloth and buried near the south-facing slope, Turagain's direction. Her legacy isn't kept in scrolls, it's kept in marrow, in the steam that fogs a queen's face as she makes decisions no man dares question. You finish your tasks, fingers pruned, back sore, and a strange sense of awe settling in your chest. You weren't just part of a meal, you were part of a dynasty, and you did it with soup. The morning is cold, but the tension is colder. You feel it before you even unzip the cooking satchel. Something in the way the servants speak with their eyes instead of words, in how every bowl is double-checked, in how even the horses seem quieter today. There's no fire yet, but the hearth is glowing, embers tucked under a thick layer of ash, waiting. You know not to disturb it. Today, the queen is hosting a meal in silence, but not the usual silence. This is the kind of silence that carries weight, a warning, because no one dares to compliment the food today, not even a nod, because etiquette here is built on the edge of fear and reverence. And in this camp, praise, when not requested, is not a kindness, it's a challenge. The queen has ordered a simple breakfast, hard cheese, flatbread, and pickled garlic. On the surface, nothing unusual, but the presence of garlic is rare, and when paired with silence, it means something is being tested. Historians still debate whether Mongol queens used food to provoke or to observe, but everyone agrees the rules at these tables were precise. To compliment a dish without permission is to suggest surprise. Surprise means expectation was low, and that means insult. You remember a man once praised the queen's lentil stew as more flavorful than usual. He was not invited back. The queen enters wearing her winter robe, deep blue with silver thread. She does not speak, does not nod. She sits and waits. You lay the food gently, placing the garlic last. The vinegar scent rises like a question no one wants to ask. She takes a bite of the bread, chews slowly, then the cheese. Another pause. Then she lifts a single clove of pickled garlic and holds it between two fingers. She does not eat it. Not yet. A guest arrives, unexpected, but not uninvited. A young advisor, eager-eyed, cheeks still marked by the cold wind outside. He bows too fast. His voice cracks as he greets the queen. She does not respond, just lifts the garlic to her mouth and eats it whole. That's when the room drops its breath, because eating garlic first is rare. It means, I expect truth, only truth. The advisor sits, visibly shaken. The cheese is placed before him. He does not touch it. Wise. You step back, watching from your corner. The queen speaks, just one word. Report. The advisor begins, stumbling, clearly rehearsed. He talks of caravans, of borders, of supply lines holding, but he avoids names. You watch the queen lift another clove. She sets it on the rim of her bowl. A sign. She doubts him. He notices, begins to sweat, adjusts his tone, adds detail, mentions dates, mentions names. You see the queen soften, just slightly. Then she lifts the clove from the bowl rim and eats it. That's mercy. She believes him. For now. The meal continues. Bread is broken, cheese is sliced, but still no praise, no compliments. Even the advisor doesn't dare comment on the richness of the cheese or the balance of the garlic. Because here, silence is not just a shield, it's protection. Praise, given too freely, can wound. The queen stands before finishing. Another message. Something is unresolved. You collect the dishes. Her bowl still has one clove left, untouched. You leave it there as required. The advisor exits quickly. You watch him glance over his shoulder once, then disappear into the fog. The queen returns to her seat, alone now. She lifts the last clove, places it in her mouth, and chews slowly. Finality, decision. Later, you'll hear that a new order was issued, subtle but significant. A shift in trade routes, a replacement in command. No blood spilled, just garlic. Just silence. Just a spoon and a look and a bite taken without comment. You finish cleaning. The vinegar smell lingers, sharp and bright. You breathe it in, and you think, not for the first time, that in this world of warriors and wind, it's the quiet meals that change the course of everything. The sun is barely up, and already the kitchen smells like smoke and worry. You're hunched over a narrow wooden table, trimming fat from sheep ribs with a knife that hasn't been properly sharpened in weeks, and every scrape of steel against bone echoes louder than it should. Something is off. You feel it in the stiffness of the servants' spines, in the way the coals are being stirred more than necessary, in the way no one is speaking above a whisper. Then someone drops a salt jar. It hits the dirt with a puff, and for a moment everything freezes, because today is not a day to spill salt. Today is the day the queen enforces the kitchen laws. And this morning, salt is not seasoning, it's symbol. You've heard the stories, everyone has, of how stealing salt, even a pinch, is considered treason. Not theft, treason. Because salt preserves, salt protects, salt binds, and taking it without permission is the same as declaring disloyalty. Historians still debate whether the punishment was truly exile or if that's just what the storytellers made of it, but no one dares test the truth. The queen has been known to walk through the kitchen unannounced, brushing her fingers across jars and stones, checking weights by hand, her silence more terrifying than any accusation. And today, she's coming. You're sure of it. The stew is plain. Lentils, roots, marrow. Nothing fancy. But every ingredient is being weighed with the precision of an astrologer charting stars. The Queen's law is simple. Everything must be accounted for. A missing herb leaf? Noted. An overpour of milk? Documented. Salt? Counted grain by grain. You remember a cook who once mismeasured barley. She wasn't punished. She wasn't scolded. She was just reassigned. Sent to the goat pens. She never cooked again. The queen arrives without warning. Her steps soft, her robe unadorned. She scans the room like a hawk scans a field. You feel your chest tighten. Her eyes land on the spilled salt. No one speaks. Then she kneels, picks up a pinch between her fingers, rolls it, drops it back. That's it. But it's enough. She walks past, inspects the broth, lifts a spoon, tastes, sets it down. Still no words. Then she gestures. To you. You step forward. She points to the salt jar. You kneel, scoop it up, reset it on the stone. The message is clear. Carelessness is noted, but forgiveness is possible. Today. The queen moves to the storage tent. You follow. Inside are rows of jars, pouches, bundles of herbs, and dried meat. She opens one, dried scallions, lifts them, smells, nods. Another, fermented milk cakes, cracks one open, examines the center. She's not just looking for rot, she's looking for dishonesty, for laziness, for anything that suggests decay in the chain of trust. Then she reaches the salt vault, a stone chest sealed with rope and wax. You feel your heart beat slow as she cuts the wax seal. Opens it. Inside, 2 leather pouches and a carved wooden scoop. She counts the pouches, weighs one in her palm, opens it, scoops, sprinkles, watches. Her face reveals nothing. Then she reseals it, ties the rope, looks at you, says one word: balance. That's the law, not just in flavor, in everything. After she leaves, the kitchen breathes again. You clean the spilled salt, carefully this time. You pour the broth into the bowls. Serve it warm, but no one praises it, not today. Today is for remembering that a queen's authority does not come from volume. It comes from vigilance, from quiet audits and soft footsteps that can undo you if your hands are careless. You eat your own bowl later, alone, in the corner. It tastes fine, salty even. But you don't smile, you just chew. And think about how close you came to losing everything over a grain that could fit on your thumbnail. You've carried many bowls in your time at camp. Heavy bowls, cracked bowls, bowls too hot to hold or too full to trust. But none quite like the one you're carrying today. It's wide, shallow, made of polished black stone, and it smells of blood and celebration. Inside are 49 pieces of lamb, each from a different animal, each cut to the same size, arranged in a spiral like a map leading somewhere you're not sure you want to go. Today is the feast with 49 sheep, and no one knows for certain what it means. Historians still debate whether it marks a wedding, an execution, or the quiet merging of two camps that once wanted to slit each other's throats in the dark. What you know is this: the meat was carved under moonlight, the fire was lit before sunrise, and no one, not even the queen, has spoken above a whisper since. The queen's tent has been cleared of everything but rugs, a single table, and a bowl. No herbs, no sauces, no side dishes. This is not a meal for comfort, it's a meal for memory. She enters at dusk, dressed in red, not her usual blue or gray, her hair bound with silver thread. She does not look at anyone. She walks directly to the bowl and kneels beside it. No throne, no cushion, just knees on wool and eyes on flesh. You stand with the others, hands at your sides, hearts pounding so loud it feels like the rugs should tremble. She lifts one piece of lamb, bites once, chews, swallows, then places it back in the bowl. That's the signal. Everyone else moves in, carefully, one by one. No pushing, no noise. Each person takes one piece, eats in silence, returns to their place. You watch the pattern unfold like a ritual older than war. They say this feast was first served after a betrayal, that the original queen arranged the meat to count the lives lost, and the piece she left uneaten marked the traitor. Others say it was a betrothal meal, 49 sheep for 49 ancestors, all called to witness the union. You prefer not to choose between the stories, because both could be true, and the queen's face doesn't give anything away. You take your turn. Your fingers brush the stone. It's colder than expected. You lift a piece. It's tender, oily. You eat, swallow, step back. No eye contact, no words. When the last piece is taken, the queen stands, looks into the empty bowl, then pours water into it, just one ladleful. The water hits the grease and turns cloudy. She stirs it with her finger, then tips the bowl and pours it into the fire. Steam rises in a sharp hiss. The smell is not pleasant, but it's sacred. You don't flinch. No one does. That's how you survive here. The queen turns, exits the tent, and the feast is over. No toasts, no music, just memory. The bowl is left behind. You're the one tasked with cleaning it. You carry it down to the river, scrubbing it with cold sand until your knuckles crack. The grease doesn't want to leave. That feels fitting. You think of the 49 sheep, who they were, what they meant, if they meant anything at all. Maybe they were just sheep. Maybe they were symbols. Maybe they were warnings. When the bowl is finally clean, you set it in the sun to dry. You sit beside it, and for the first time all day, you breathe like someone who wasn't being measured. The queen never said a word, but she spoke, and you understood her loud and clear. You wake to the sound of digging, not loud, not frantic, but rhythmic and patient, like someone counting heartbeats with each stroke of a wooden spade. It's not unusual in camp for earth to be moved, pits for fire, trenches for drainage, but this digging is different. Today is a burial day, not for a body, for bones. Last night's feast, with its 49 pieces of lamb, left behind not just grease-stained bowls but sacred remnants. In this world, leftovers are not waste. They are residue of intention, soaked in memory, infused with a queen's judgment. And those bones? They must not be discarded. They must be buried. It's not your task alone. You and 3 others are chosen to carry the remains. Wrapped in dark cloth, each bundle is tied with sinew and brushed with ash. You cradle them like something living, because here, even discarded pieces are honored. The burial site is not far, just beyond the west edge of camp, where the grass grows in tufts and the ground softens after rain. The hole has already been dug, 1 meter deep, ringed with stones, lined with dried leaves and strips of old silk. You kneel, place the bundles gently, cover them with earth, press your palm to the mound, say nothing, no chants, no prayers, just presence. The queen stands nearby, not overseeing, not instructing, just watching. Her robe today is the color of dusk, muted and heavy. She holds no staff, no symbol of authority, just a single clove of garlic in her hand, a ward perhaps, or a memory. Historians still debate whether these bone burials were spiritual or political, a way to mark territory or simply to avoid waste. But you've seen the queen pause at old mounds, eyes distant, lips still, like she's listening for something under the soil. When the last bone is laid to rest, a jar of broth is poured over the mound, slow, steaming, fragrant. The scent seeps into the ground, a final offering. Then a flat stone is placed on top, etched not with names but with patterns, a spiral, a flame, a horse's eye. Symbols only the queen understands fully. Later, the mound will be decorated with herbs, maybe a scrap of ribbon. Children will be warned not to play near it, not out of fear, but respect. You return to camp in silence. The queen does not follow. She remains behind, staring at the dirt, like it holds answers to questions no one else dares ask. Back at the kitchen, the pots are already boiling for the next meal. Life continues. It always does. But something has shifted. You can feel it in the way the smoke curls differently, in how no one meets your gaze. You've helped bury judgment, and judgment, once buried, ripples. That night, you dream of lamb bones singing beneath the earth. Not words, just music. Low, steady, certain. As if reminding you that even what's finished is not forgotten. In the morning, the queen will walk past you, say nothing, and place a dried clove in your palm. You'll nod. You'll understand. You've buried more than bones. You've preserved memory. And memory is the sharpest blade the queen carries. The sun is still a pink whisper above the horizon when you lift the lid off the fermentation barrel and inhale the sharp, sour scent of arag, mare's milk transformed by time, heat, and the invisible labor of bacteria. It smells like childhood and war, like summer and steel. The queen has ordered the milk to be stirred precisely 9 times before breakfast. Not 8, not 10, 9. You don't ask why, no one does. Because this morning is about more than drink. It's about signal. Milk fermentation as statecraft. You stir slowly, the wooden paddle creaking as it cuts through the froth. Around you, the tent is quiet, the fire subdued, the servants unusually focused. The queen's robe today is pale, almost translucent in the morning light, and her hair is bound in loops, each one mirrored like twin moons. She doesn't sit yet. She stands near the fermentation barrel, watching. Not you, but the process. Because Arag is not just nourishment. It is a message, a code. Historians still debate whether its role in court life was ceremonial or strategic. But anyone who has lived near the queen long enough knows it can be both. When she serves it cold, it means delay. When she serves it warm, urgency. When she skips it entirely, danger. Today she wants it lukewarm, balanced, a sign of pending peace or fragile truce. You finish stirring. The queen steps forward, scoops a ladleful into a black clay cup, and raises it to her lips. She sips once, then again. Then she hands the cup to you. This has never happened before. You hesitate, then accept. The cup is heavy, the rim uneven. You drink. It tastes like grass and smoke and something ancient. The queen nods once, not at you, but at what has just occurred. The first shared cup. A signal of inclusion, of trust, or maybe just of observation. You pass the cup to the next person in the circle. No words, just movement. A ritual unfolding like water on silk. The Arag is then poured into 4 additional cups and placed at the corners of the hearth. North, south, east, west. The queen walks a slow circle around them, her feet light, her breath even. She chants softly, not words, but tones, notes. This part is old, older than the empire. A ritual meant to tie the drink to the land, the people, the wind. Later, you learn that a northern delegation is arriving this afternoon. That's why the milk matters. Because before a treaty is signed, before a feast is held, before a name is offered, the Irag must speak first. Its temperature, its texture, its sourness, all carry meaning. You are tasked with preparing the second batch. The queen wants it thicker, less tangy. That tells you the visitors are stubborn, used to strength. You grind dried berries into the mix, add a pinch of aged fat, and let it rest under a hide blanket. When it's ready, the queen drinks again, smiles faintly. That's the signal. The visitors are close, and the negotiation can begin. No scrolls, no blades, just cups passed hand to hand, lips to rim, eyes unblinking. Later that evening, after the guests have left, you find a folded cloth at your sleeping mat. Inside, it is a single sprig of wild mint and a note written in soft ink. You stirred well. That's all. No signature. But you know who it's from. You smile, not widely, just enough. Because today, you were part of diplomacy. You stirred milk into message, and it worked. You wake before the fire is lit, drawn from half sleep by a silence that feels thicker than usual, heavier, like the air itself is holding its breath. The queen has not spoken for 2 days, not even a whisper, not even a glance heavy enough to count as language. You don't know why. No one does. But the kitchen is tense. The spoons are polished 3 times instead of 2. The pots are scrubbed until they shine like mirrors. And this morning, a strange task awaits. You are told to prepare a dish that does not exist. Or rather, a dish that has never been made by human hands. The queen has asked for the shadow stew. That's what the servants call it. No recipe, no tradition, no instructions. Only a vague description passed down from a cook who claimed to see it served once, decades ago, to a guest who never showed up. You are given only 3 ingredients: wild onion, lamb tongue, and dried apricot. The rest is up to you. You start by boiling the tongue until the broth turns cloudy, then straining it through silk. You sear the onion in sheep fat until it nearly burns, then mix it with the apricots softened in vinegar and press it into a paste. The result is strange, rich, slightly sweet, and deeply unsettling. You serve it in a black bowl. No garnish, no decoration. The queen enters the tent at twilight, robes dusted with travel, hair undone. She looks at the bowl, then at you, then nothing. She sits, lifts the spoon, takes one bite, pauses, takes another, then sets the spoon down. She does not finish. She does not speak, but her eyes narrow slightly, the first change in days, a flicker. Something has shifted. You wait outside, your pulse a quiet drum in your throat. After what feels like hours, the queen exits and hands you the bowl, still a quarter full. Take it to the western altar, she says, her voice soft, rough, like it hasn't been used in years. You nod, you walk. The western altar is a flat stone surrounded by foxglove and dust. You pour the stew onto the stone. It soaks in slowly, no steam rising. The earth drinks it like blood. When you return, the queen is lighting a fire with her own hands. Another strange sight. Queens do not build fires, but tonight she does. And as she adds the kindling, she mutters words in a language you don't recognize. Old, harsh, sacred. She's not just cooking. She's calling something. Historians still debate whether queens used food for magic or memory, but tonight you believe both are true. The tent smells like char and sweetness, like endings and invitations. You stand still, waiting for the moment to end, but it doesn't. It lingers, like a shadow. You sleep with your eyes half open, the image of that half-eaten stew stuck behind your eyelids. And in the morning, the queen is gone. No horse is disturbed, no footprints, just the empty bowl, washed clean, left on the hearth. You touch it once. It's warm. The kind of warm that suggests it was held for a long time. You don't ask questions. You make tea. You go about your tasks. But all day, the kitchen speaks in glances. And that night, when the queen returns as quietly as she left, no one greets her. No one dares. They just listen to the sound of her feet on the rugs and the soft sigh she gives before she sits to eat again, as if nothing ever happened. You are chopping scallions when the smell reaches you first. Not food, not fire, but smoke. Thin and stringy and bitter, curling through the gaps in the tent walls like a warning. It's not accidental. It's planned. You glance outside. The queen's fire has been lit differently today, not from the center, but from the side, with green wood that smolders instead of blazes. That's the sign. The smoke is meant to speak, and it's saying, be ready. In this camp, and not all messages are delivered by messengers. Some come in scent, in steam, in the thickness of the air. Today, the queen is communicating through her cooking fire. You've seen it before. Once, a pile of damp sage burned for hours, signaling a delay in negotiations. Another time, dry straw turned to smoke so fast it filled 3 yurts before anyone spoke, marking the death of a cousin across the plains. Now, the smoke is low and persistent, not choking, but invasive. It clings to your clothes. You try not to cough. The queen hasn't emerged from her yurt, but she doesn't have to. The message is out. You're instructed to make a soup, light but pungent, with goat fat skimmed from yesterday's roast, and black radish sliced so thin it curls. You simmer it in the smoke itself, letting the smell infuse the broth. You know better than to season it until the fire shifts. When the smoke turns white, that's when you salt. When it stays gray, you wait. The queen controls not just the flame, but the wind. Or at least, it feels that way. Historians still debate whether Mongol queens used smoke for communication or whether it was a coincidence scholars romanticized later. But you've watched people shift direction mid-sentence because of a change in wind. That's not coincidence. That's command. You carry the finished soup to the queen's yurt, head bowed, bowl held steady. Inside, it's dim, the only light from coals reflecting off a copper pot. The queen is seated in silence, her face unreadable, but the smoke curls behind her like a veil. She takes the bowl, lifts it to her lips, sips once, then gestures for you to sit. That's rare. You kneel. She speaks. Just one word. He's arrived. You don't ask who. You already know. Someone important. Someone she does not trust. Someone who needs to be warned before words are even exchanged. The soup is the warning. The smoke is the signal. You pour another bowl and carry it to the outer tent. There, a man in heavy furs sits on a stool too small for his pride. He smiles when he sees you, but it's tight, wary. You hand him the bowl. He sniffs it. His nose twitches. He sips. He blinks. You watch him fight the instinct to set it down. The queen has sent a message. Tread carefully. He does. That evening, no decisions are made, no deals signed, only glances, only smoke. The fire continues its slow, intentional burn, and the camp adjusts accordingly. Meetings postponed, riders delayed. Even the dogs seem more cautious. The queen eats quietly. No stew, no bread, just tea. She doesn't need more. She said enough. When the fire dies down and the smoke thins into nothing, you feel the tension release, like a string uncoiling. The message has been sent. It was heard. You wash the pot, your hands blackened with soot. The water turns gray. You rinse again and again. But the smell lingers, just like the memory, just like the lesson. In the Mongol court, speech is not the only form of language. Sometimes the smoke is a no. You are gathering utensils when you notice something strange. Not a missing pot or a cracked bowl, but the complete absence of anything metal. The knives are gone. The spoons are gone. Even the ladles have been replaced with long sticks carved from juniper, their ends sanded smooth like tools, made by someone very patient and very tired. You don't ask. You never ask. But inside, you wonder. Because today begins the week without metal, a quiet rule that returns every year and is never explained. You've lived through it before, but it still unnerves you. For 7 days, the queen forbids all use of metal in the kitchen. No blades, no kettles, no tongs, no iron skewers. Everything must be cut with reed knives, stirred with wooden rods, boiled in ceramic pots set over clay tripods. You chop onions with a shard of bone. You slice lamb with a sharp-edged stone. It's not efficient, it's exhausting. But it's the rule. Historians still debate the reason behind the ritual. Some say it commemorates a time when the court was on the run and metal had to be melted down for bribes and blade repairs. Others believe it is a spiritual cleansing, a way of humbling the cook and honoring the earth. You believe it's both. Maybe more. The queen arrives at midday, dressed simply, barefoot. She steps onto the cooking mat and stirs her tea with a stick of ash wood. No silver, no gold, just wood and heat. She drinks. The tent is silent. The servants have stopped whispering. Even the children know better than to play near the queen's yurt during this week. There is a reverence in the absence, as though the metal itself had been causing noise all along. Your hands ache by the third day. Your palms blister. The bone knife slips and you cut yourself, not deep, but enough to remind you how soft the body is compared to stone. You wash your wound with salt water and keep working. The queen notices. She doesn't say anything, but the next morning, a strip of soft leather is left near your bed. The edges oiled, the surface clean. A bandage, a gesture. You thank her silently. Day 4, and the soup is thin but perfect. The wooden spoon pulls the flavor slowly, gently, coaxing out something you'd forgotten was there. The queen eats 3 bites, then sets her bowl down. That's approval. You clean without metal too, scrubbing pots with sand, rinsing bowls in hot water carried by hand in ceramic jars. The work is endless, but the rhythm is strange and peaceful, like walking barefoot after years in boots. You begin to notice the sound of things more clearly, the bubbling of broth, the creak of wood, the hush of cloth, and you wonder if this is the point, if silence can be shaped, like a meal. Day 6, the queen hosts a gathering. No formal audience, just a shared meal, bread cooked on stone, meat torn by hand, tea stirred with twigs. The guests are not dignitaries. They are elders, herders, old women with cracked lips and strong eyes. She sits among them, same as you. She chews slowly, smiles once. Day 7, she breaks the rule herself. 1 spoon, a silver one, polished until it shines like a coin. She lifts it, taps the rim of her bowl. A sound clear and high, a note. The end of the week. The metal returns. You exhale. That night, when the fires have died and the dishes are clean, you look at your reflection in the restored ladle. You look tired, but sharper, like the absence of tools made you something more exact. You place the ladle gently in its hook, and as you leave the tent, you think about how much quieter everything feels now, even with the clink of metal back in place, like the silence never really left. It just waited for permission to speak. It's barely dawn when you're handed a set of drinking cups. Not ordinary ones, but ceremonial, carved from horn and polished until they gleam like obsidian. Each one is slightly different in shape, but arranged in such a way that, when viewed from above, they form the outline of a horse's gallop. 4 cups for legs, 1 curved for the tail, a wide one for the chest. Today is not about hydration, it's about formation. The queen is preparing for a diplomatic meal, but this one is different. The guest is not new. He's been here before twice, once as an ally, once as a liar. Today is his 3rd visit, and the cups must speak before she does. You arrange them on the mat in front of the hearth, exactly as instructed. No deviation, no creative flourish, because this pattern is not decoration, it's history. The placement of the cups mirrors the formation used by cavalry during retreat, signaling controlled withdrawal, a reminder, a warning. Historians still debate whether such cup arrangements were universally understood or simply evolved within the queen's inner circle. But in this camp, no one mistakes their meaning. The queen enters wearing her negotiation robe, dark red with gold trim, the collar high, her hair tightly bound in a knot shaped like an arrowhead. She surveys the cups, nods, then sits. The guest arrives. He's older now, slower, but his eyes still flick like a hawk's. He sees the cups, freezes, smiles too quickly, bows too low. He understands. The queen pours the first drink herself. Fermented milk, not wine. A sign of sobriety, of seriousness. She places the cup in the center. He picks it up, sips, returns it. The ritual has begun. You serve the stew, mutton with barley and bitter root, thick, humble. A dish that carries no flattery, only function. The queen eats 3 bites, then places her spoon down. The guest eats slower, watches her hands. When she reaches for the second cup, shaped like the front leg of the horse, he blinks. You see him lean back, just slightly. He doesn't speak. He sips. You wonder if he remembers what happened the last time he underestimated this woman. How his trade routes were quietly diverted. How 3 of his couriers vanished in the fog. You know he remembers. The meal continues. Bread is broken, but not passed. No jokes are made, no compliments exchanged. Just the steady rhythm of bowls emptied and cups lifted. Then the queen speaks. 1 sentence. You are late. He flinches, replies with a practiced apology, but he's too late for charm. She reaches for the last cup, the one at the tail of the formation, and lifts it without drinking. She sets it aside. That's the message. The deal is not dead, but it's not ready either. The guest nods, slowly, thoughtfully. He adjusts his robe, finishes his stew. He does not ask for tea. He knows the meeting is over. As he leaves, he bows again, this time lower, with more truth. The queen remains seated, her face still, her hands folded in her lap. You clear the cups. Wash them carefully. Dry them with the cloth embroidered with old symbols. You place them back in the wooden box where they're kept between uses. As you close the lid, you realize your hands are shaking. Not from fear, from awe. You didn't just witness a meal. You witnessed a maneuver, a silent speech made from barley and bone, and the direction a cup was turned. The next day, the guest sends word that he accepts her terms. No argument, no additions, just acceptance. You smile quietly. You knew he would, because no one walks away from a galloping horse without remembering where the hooves land. You are placing dried herbs in a clay pot when the fire refuses to light, not once, not twice, but 3 times in a row. The spark dies before it catches. The kindling hisses like a snake and curls back into smoke. You try again. Nothing. You pause. This isn't just bad luck. It's omen. In the camp of the queen, when a fire refuses to light, it means the meal must be stopped. You've seen it before. Once, during a wedding feast, when a celebratory stew wouldn't boil. The queen canceled the entire ceremony. 2 weeks later, the groom was caught selling family secrets to a rival tribe. Today, the breakfast is a simple millet porridge with goat milk and honey. No guests, no audience, but the fire says no. And so, you wait. You sit beside the hearth, hands folded, breath slow. You don't speak. No one does. The tent fills with silence so thick it hums. Then the queen enters. She sees the unlit hearth, says nothing. She walks to the pot, kneels, and places her hand flat on the stones. She stays that way for a long time, listening, not to sound, to something older, something beneath. She rises, turns to you. Leave it, she says. You bow. The pot is covered and placed aside. The meal will not be cooked, not today. Instead, the queen orders a cold preparation, fermented curd, dried berries, and flatbreads soaked in tea. A strange mix. one not often served together. But today is not about taste. It's about signal. And the fire's refusal has already spoken once. Historians still debate whether such events were truly seen as divine rejection or merely ritual superstition. But here, where earth and ash are obeyed as strictly as kings, you don't argue with coals that won't burn. The queen eats in silence, 2 bites of curd, 1 piece of bread, a sip of tea. Then she pauses. The tent flap rustles. A rider enters, covered in dust, cloak stiff with sweat, his face hidden beneath a scarf. He bows. She does not acknowledge him. She waits. He removes the scarf, speaks only 5 words. The envoy never crossed over. That's all. But it explains the fire, the absence, the refusal. Something was about to be said today. A message, a dish, a statement. But now it must wait. The queen dismisses the rider, then turns back to the hearth. She picks up a single twig, blackened from the earlier attempts. She places it gently back on the woodpile, a reminder, a placeholder. Later that evening, the wind picks up. Dust rolls into camp like fog, dry and biting. The queen does not emerge from her yurt, but a second fire is lit outside in the public square. It catches instantly, burns bright, but she does not move. That fire is not for her, it is for the people, a signal of continuity, of order. The queen's hearth, though, remains dark. You sleep lightly, uneasily. You dream of smoke that speaks in whispers, of coals that murmur secrets. In the morning, the pot is still cold. The queen sends for no food. She drinks tea alone. The day passes. No orders are given. No messengers leave camp. It's as if the world itself is waiting. On the 3rd morning, without fanfare, the queen walks to the hearth. She picks up the same kindling as before, strikes flint once. A flame appears. It holds. It grows. She nods. The meal begins again, but it will not be the same. The first bite will be memory. The second, tribute. The third, decision. It begins with undercooked lamb, not burnt, not raw, just wrong. You slice into the meat and the center is too red. The juices run clear instead of rich, and the smell isn't what it should be. It's not your fault. You know that. The fire was steady, the seasoning correct. But something about this meat refused to cooperate, and now it lies on the queen's plate like a question no one wants to answer. She looks at it, does not speak. Everyone holds their breath. Then, without changing her expression, she lays down her knife, pushes the plate away, and stands. That's all. But it is enough to send panic rippling through the kitchen. The queen never leaves a meal unfinished unless she's making a point. You know the story. Everyone does. Of the half-cooked revolt. A legend passed in whispers over boiling pots and beside drying racks. A princess once served undercooked lamb to her mother-in-law, the queen at the time, on the day of a crucial tribal merger. The elders read it as defiance, an insult masked as accident. A month later, the princess's camp was disbanded, her herds redistributed, her name erased from the marriage scrolls. Some say she meant it. Some say she didn't. Doesn't matter. The lamb was undercooked. The queen never forgot. Today, the current queen walks out of the tent, robes flowing, eyes sharp. She says nothing, but the message is received. You move quickly. The offending plate is removed, the hearth cleared, the lamb bones buried. A new dish is prepared. Goat stew with barley and bitter herbs. Humble, contrite. But the queen does not return for hours. The stew goes cold. You reheat it, twice. She finally enters at sunset, her face unreadable. She sits, does not speak. You serve the stew. She eats one bite, pauses, eats another, then stops. Silence, not tension, reflection. She looks at the hearth, then at you, then at the empty space beside her seat. "Who prepared the lamb?" she asks. You step forward. "I did," you say, though it's only half true. "Others helped, but the responsibility is yours." She stares, not with anger, with measurement. "And why did you serve it that way?" You open your mouth, then close it, because there is no answer, not one that matters. "Food tells truth," she says quietly, "even when your tongue does not." She stands, leaves the rest of the stew untouched. Later, she calls a gathering. No punishment is announced. No blame is assigned. Instead, she speaks of loyalty, of timing, of the danger in messages we don't know we're sending. Then she names you, not to scold, to assign. You are now responsible for ceremonial cuts, a role once held by her own cousin. You bow, deeply. You understand. You are being watched, trusted, tested. The next day, you butcher the meat yourself. You feel its weight, its resistance. You cook slowly, precisely. You taste 3 times. You serve with hands that do not shake. And when the queen eats, she finishes the plate, says nothing. But you catch the smallest shift in her eyes, a softening, a permission. You've passed, but only just. The kitchen is warm this morning, heavy with steam, and the slow hiss of boiling water. But something about the air feels sharper than usual, like the bite of a herb too strong for the soup it's in. You glance at the queen's table and see what's new. A bowl of pickled roots, the color of garnets, placed just left of center. But it's not the roots that unsettle you. It's the missing garlic. Today is the first day in memory that the queen has banned garlic from the meal. It is nowhere, not in the stew, not on the trays, not even in the oil. It has vanished completely. And that can only mean one thing. Something loud is being silenced. In this camp, garlic is more than flavor. It's signal. It's fire. It's edge. When it's present, it speaks of strength, clarity, even confrontation. When it's gone, it means someone must be quiet. Historians still debate whether the banning of garlic was a form of social control or spiritual symbolism. But to you, it is immediate and obvious. Someone is being warned. Maybe everyone. The queen enters dressed in pale green, the color she wears when she wants to be seen but not questioned. She sits, gestures for the first dish. It's barley cooked in goat milk, served with sweet fig and a hint of dried mint. It's soft, rounded, polite. You serve in silence. She eats slowly, not savoring, just measuring. Around her, the attendants move more cautiously than usual. Spoons clink softer. Cloths are folded with more care. Even the fire in the hearth crackles more gently. The absence of garlic is louder than any command. You catch a glance between 2 servants, eyebrows raised, one tiny shake of a head. They don't understand either. Or maybe they do, and they're afraid to admit it. You don't ask. You never ask. The queen's meal continues. A stew of lentils and turnip, spiced only with coriander and salt. A tea infused with rose and pine. A side of crushed beans wrapped in flatbread. All mild, all muted, all careful. Halfway through, a messenger arrives, kneeling with a scroll held in both hands. The queen takes it, opens it, reads in full view of everyone, and then sets it aflame in the hearth. That's the answer. No reply. The messenger bows and retreats. You serve the final dish. Sweet rice, steamed over pine wood, flavored with cinnamon bark and dusted with powdered cheese. No garlic, still no garlic. The queen eats 2 bites, then lifts her cup. "We remember what we omit," she says aloud, not looking at anyone. The tent freezes. That's the only sentence she will speak all day. You clean the dishes with a sense of reverence, more like washing artifacts than cookware. The garlic remains untouched in the storage jar. You don't move it, don't open it. You pretend it doesn't exist. That night, the queen walks alone through camp. No guards, no torch, just her and the dark, and the sound of her sandals in the dust. She stops outside 3 tents, pauses, listens, walks on. The next morning, 2 of those tents are empty, quietly packed. No farewells, no reasons. You find a note beside the garlic jar, written in clean ink, unsigned. It reads, "Too much flavor blinds the tongue. You fold it once. Hide it under your blanket. You serve breakfast with rosemary instead. You wake in the dark and know, without checking the sky, that today is a moon-cutting day." It's not written on any calendar, not marked by any official, but you can feel it in the rhythm of the camp. The slow, deliberate movements, the hushed footsteps, the way the knives are placed with their blades turned inward. Today, every slice of meat must follow the moon. The queen has decreed it. That means no straight lines. Every cut must curve, gentle and crescent-shaped, mimicking the phase of the moon above. And not just because it's beautiful or poetic, but because meat cut any other way today would be considered defiant, disrespectful, possibly even dangerous. You've heard the stories, everyone has, about the feast where a single piece of lamb was sliced square instead of curved, and 3 days later, the skies turned red with dust and a prized foal was born blind. Coincidence, maybe, but no one's willing to test it twice. Historians still debate whether lunar butchery had actual ritual significance, or if it was simply a way to maintain control over kitchen discipline. But when you're the one holding the blade, you don't argue with tradition. You just follow the curve. You sharpen your knife until it shaves paper, then begin. The meat is soft, freshly slaughtered, still warm in the center. You slide the knife in slow arcs, carving each strip as though tracing a path through stars. No waste, no haste. The queen enters, mid-morning, silent as always, her robe the color of frost. She watches the cutting for a full minute, then nods once, approval. You wrap the meat in wild mint and steam it in ceramic pots, each one placed in a triangular pattern that mimics the moon's path across the sky. The fire is low. It must cook slowly. Patience is part of the ritual. The first bowl is served at noon. The queen lifts a slice of meat, examines the curve, then bites. She chews 5 times, swallows, then sets her spoon down and looks out toward the north wall of the tent, where a strip of hide has been painted with a single white arc, the moon's mark for today. You follow her gaze and understand. This meal is not just about the moon. It's about memory. You recall the tale of her mother, who once served a dish so perfectly curved it was said to bring peace between feuding herdsmen, and the time her grandmother refused to eat moon-cut meat from an unblessed knife and lost 3 riders before sunrise. The queen lifts her second piece of meat, offers it to the elder seated beside her, a rare gesture. The elder accepts, bows slightly, eats. That is trust. That is history. You continue cooking. More meat, more curves. Your fingers ache from the pressure, your shoulders from holding posture. But you do not complain. The moon watches. At dusk, a child enters the tent, barefoot, silent. The queen gestures to the last bowl. The child kneels, eats with 2 hands, eyes wide. The queen places a hand on his shoulder. Another message, a blessing passed through food. That night, the moon is bright and hay and soft as milk. You sit alone by the fire, washing your knife, staring at the sky. You feel calm, complete. You think of every curve you made today. Each one was a choice, a gesture, a prayer. The queen doesn't thank you. She never does. But as she passes, she nods once. And that's more than enough. Tomorrow, the meat will be cut straight again. But tonight, the moon remembers you. You are peeling boiled eggs when you're called to the hearth by name. Something that rarely happens and never for a reason that feels casual. The queen has made a request, an exacting one. She wants her meal portioned in 3 bites. Not a fourth, not a second. Exactly 3. You know the rule. It's old, older than most can remember. Older even than some recipes still in use. The ritual of 3 bites is sacred, precise, and entirely without room for error. It applies only to meals eaten before decision. When the queen must choose between mercy or exile, alliance or war, blessing or silence, she eats no more than 3 bites. Not because she is full, because tradition demands discipline. You prepare the dish yourself. A barley mash steamed in pine needles, topped with a thin veil of butter and a single slice of preserved quince. It smells of patience and smoke. The portion is small, it must be. 3 bites only. Not one too many, not one too few. You serve it in a shallow bronze bowl polished to the color of clouded gold. The queen sits already, her expression as unreadable as always, but her eyes flick once to the food, then back to the flame. She picks up the spoon. The first bite is slow, drawn out, a full pause before chewing, a bite for memory. You think about what she might be remembering. The last visit from the mountain tribes, the broken treaty folded into her sleeve, the child who never returned from the river last spring. The second bite comes quicker, a bite for weighing. Her hand moves slightly, the spoon angled just a little more than before, her spine straighter. She chews, and you think she might be imagining paths now, ones that split like rivers around a hill. Each choice with its consequence. The third bite is small, almost absent. She barely raises the spoon, a bite for sealing, for finishing the ritual, for saying, I have seen all that is before me, and now I will choose. She sets the spoon down. The bowl is not empty, but it is complete. She lifts her hands, presses her thumbs to her temples, closes her eyes. The tent is utterly silent. No fire crackle, no footstep, just breath and anticipation. Then she speaks. Send for her, she says. You do not ask who. You already know. One of the younger women from the southern camps, long rumored to be a spy, long sheltered by a minor noble too distant to confront directly. The queen is ready to act now, not with a sword, with a meal, with a choice made between the second and third bite. Historians still debate whether the 3-bite rule was truly enforced, or if it became romanticized by poets and scrollmakers hungry for structure. But here, you've seen it, you've served it, and you know its truth. That night, the bowl is cleaned but not scrubbed. A ring of butter remains dried on the rim. You leave it there, a mark of the moment. The queen does not eat again for the rest of the day. She drinks tea. She sits. She listens. And the young woman is brought in at sundown. No guards, no rope, just an invitation and a choice. You do not stay to watch what is said. You are back in the kitchen, cleaning the bronze, folding the cloths, setting the spoons in order. But you hear footsteps outside the tent, one set fast and nervous, one slow and firm, and you know the decision is already walking away into the dark. You are still stirring the morning tea when word arrives that the feast is to last 9 days. Not 3, not 7, but 9. A number that coils through your memory like a whisper, a shape that feels heavy with meaning even before you remember what it stands for. 9 days means something monumental, something that cannot be undone. The Queen has ordered a celebration without music, without laughter, and without interruption. It is to be a feast of presence, not performance. The guests have already begun to arrive. Elders on weary horses, chieftains in muted robes, and young girls carrying bowls of butter wrapped in wool. The Queen will host them all, not in the great tent, but in the open air, beneath a canopy of woven horsehair, on rugs that have been passed down through 4 generations, and each meal will be served in silence. The first course is prepared before dawn. Roasted root vegetables soaked in vinegar and honey, then dried in the sun and rehydrated in broth. You portion them evenly, arrange them in spirals. The Queen eats 1 bite, that's the beginning. Over the next 8 days, the meals unfold slowly. Grilled duck with elderberry paste, smoked sheep tongue over fermented grain, sweet rice steamed with lavender. Each dish served without introduction, without speech, without pause between courses. The guests adapt quickly. They learn to bow instead of toast, to nod instead of debate. They eat with their eyes down, their minds open. You work constantly. Your hands blister from the ladles, your knees ache from kneeling, but you never complain. Because you know what this is. You've heard the stories. A feast like this happens once in a generation, and only when the Queen wishes to etch something permanent into the memory of her people. Historians still debate whether such extended feasts were political maneuvers or spiritual rites. You no longer wonder. You are living it. On the 5th day, a child drops a cup. It does not shatter, but it echoes. The Queen looks up for the first time in hours. She says nothing, but she smiles. It is the only smile of the entire gathering. On the 7th day, it rains. The feast does not stop. The guests eat in wet silence, steam rising from their bowls like breath from a sleeping animal. You keep the fires hot, your sleeves soaked, your eyes stinging. But the Queen stays seated, her robes heavy, her hair braided with red string. The food continues. On the 9th day, you serve the final meal. Lamb roasted in clay, wrapped in leaves, stuffed with garlic and herbs. It smells like earth and endings. The Queen takes her first bite, then her second, then her third. Then she stands. That's it. No speech, no bow, no song. The guests begin to rise. Some weep, others smile. A few sit a moment longer, unwilling to break the spell. You remain still. You are holding the final ladle, watching the last of the stew settle in its bowl. The Queen walks past you, pauses. You remember well, she says. You nod. You want to say something, anything, but the silence has become sacred. Words would only bruise it. That night, you clean the last dishes, with water scented with pine ash. You dry the cups with linen that smells of sun. You sleep with sore hands and a heart too full to name. Tomorrow, things will go back to normal. Stews will be spiced. Laughter will return. Garlic will crackle in the oil again. But for now, the world is still. You have fed an empire with quiet, and it was enough. The morning after the 9-day feast begins, not with celebration or rest, but with ash. You are instructed to gather the dishes used by the queen herself. Not the serving platters or common bowls, but the ones placed directly in front of her seat. They must be washed not with water, but with ash and smoke, an ancient practice said to seal the power of a meal into memory. You collect them in silence. The ceramic is still warm, as if holding on to the echo of her hands. You carry them carefully, walking past servants who now speak again, but only in hushed tones, as if afraid to shatter what lingers in the air. You reach the hearth. A low fire burns, fed only by pine and wild sage. You add dry juniper and let the smoke rise. You stir hot ash into a bowl, add a trickle of water, and begin scrubbing the dishes slowly, pressing each motion into the clay as though writing with your hands. The queen's spoon takes the longest, not because it is dirty, but because it carries the most weight. You can still see the edge where her thumb rested. You clean it last. Once done, you lay everything on a wool mat to dry, arranged in a circle around the fire, a silent wreath of closure. The queen appears beside you without warning. She watches. You do not look up. She says nothing. Then, after a long moment, she steps into the circle. She picks up her spoon, not to eat, to hold, to remember. Then she places it back down and walks away. You understand. Today is not for meals. It is for digestion, not just of food, but of choice, of meaning, of what has passed between bowls and bites. You are told to fast, not as punishment, but as a way to let the body match the soul in stillness. You drink water boiled with salt and mint, nothing more. Around camp, the mood shifts slowly. The rugs are shaken out. The firewood is stacked. The horses are walked farther than usual. The world is returning to motion. But something has changed. You see it in the way people glance at the queen, not with curiosity, but with understanding. She has said more with her silence than most leaders manage in 1,000 decrees. That evening, she holds a small gathering. Not a feast, a council, 12 people. No table, no food. Just questions, ideas, plans. The feast was not just a celebration, it was a test. Those who remained until the 9th day, who did not falter, are now trusted with decisions. You serve tea quietly from behind a reed screen, invisible but listening. They speak of land, of borders, of sons who will one day ride where their mothers once knelt. They do not raise their voices. Even disagreement sounds like prayer. Later, when the council has ended and the stars rise sharp and bright over the camp, you walk alone to the hill behind the queen's tent. From there, you can see the fire pits, the flattened grass where guests once sat, the faint shimmer of moonlight on copper plates. You breathe deep. The air tastes like pine and cooled metal. You think about all you have seen, all you have not said, and then you realize your hunger is gone, not from fasting, from fullness, the kind that has nothing to do with food, and everything to do with knowing you are part of something that will be remembered long after the last ember dies. You are folding cloth napkins when the message arrives. Not in words, not in ink, but in gesture. The queen moves her hand across the table in a slow arc, sweeping invisible dust from the wooden surface. That is the sign. It is time for the final meal before disappearance. You don't ask where she's going. No one does. You only prepare the dish. 1 plate, 1 cup, 1 spoon, nothing more. The food must be simple, exact, and rich with meaning. You choose smoked fish, laid over wild rice, garnished with a single sprig of dill. No sauce, no salt. The fish speaks for itself. The rice has been soaked for 2 days. It's soft but strong, the kind of grain that holds its shape even when stirred. The queen eats this dish only when something is ending. You've served it twice before. Once after the last winter war. Once after the death of her sister. Now, again, you lay the food gently before her. She does not look at it. She closes her eyes. The tent is nearly empty. No attendants, no guards. Only you and her, and the meal between you. She reaches for the spoon, lifts one bite, chews slowly, swallows. Her face is still. The wind outside presses against the tent like a held breath. She takes a second bite. Her shoulders relax. The third bite takes the longest. She holds the spoon for what feels like a full minute before bringing it to her lips. After she eats it, she sets the spoon down and covers the plate with a linen cloth. She does not finish the meal. That is part of the ritual. Leaving something behind, something untouched, something to be remembered. She stands. You stand with her. She places a folded note on the table, weighted, with a small stone carved in the shape of a raven. You do not read it. You do not need to. She walks out of the tent, her steps quiet, steady, final. You do not follow. You clean slowly, touching each object like it might shatter from noise. The plate is wrapped in cloth and placed in a wooden chest beneath the altar. The spoon is burned. That is custom. When someone leaves in silence, they take no tools with them. That night, the camp is quiet. A fire burns low. No one asks where she's gone. But you know, she is not dead. She is not exiled. She is something else now. A name that will be spoken only in certain seasons, at certain tables, by people who remember the shape of her decisions and the sound of her silence. You lie down beneath a wool blanket, eyes open to the dark. You think of the meal, the spoon, the cloth left behind. You do not cry. You do not pray. You simply wait for morning, because that is what she taught you. That some endings are not endings at all, just quieter beginnings. And if she returns, you will know it. By the way the tent flap lifts, by the sound of her breath, by the fact that her plate will be empty and her place at the table still warm. You're up before the stars fade, standing by the clay stove with numb fingers and a heart that won't quiet. You've done this countless times, stirring broth before dawn, slicing roots in silence, setting a bowl where no one dares sit until she enters. But today feels different. Today, the kitchen has a weight to it. The air is heavier, not ominous, just final. You know why? Everyone does. The queen leaves today. Where? No one says. How long? No one knows. That's not the kind of question you ask a woman like her. You just cook the meal. The last one. The final dinner before she disappears. Not vanishes, not flees, just steps away. Because that's how power leaves when it's ready. Quietly, like smoke from the last coal. You're told to prepare the fish, the queen's favorite. Salted river fish, cooked over coals, wrapped in a fresh leaf bundle, with steamed grains sweetened by dried pomegranate. It's not a celebratory dish. It's an old one that comes from before the empire, before her name carried weight, before you knew how to make broth taste like warning. You gather the ingredients yourself. No help. Not today. You scale the fish, run your knife down its spine, lay it flat. The herbs are simple, just sage and coriander. No sharp spices, no fire. The grain simmers quietly in the pot. The scent like the back of your grandmother's robe. Dusty, warm, clean. You serve it in a dark wooden bowl, polished but unadorned. No carvings, nothing ceremonial. The queen eats alone tonight. No counsel, no messengers, no attendants whispering behind the drapes. Just her and you, and the meal between you. You place the bowl in front of her. She looks at it for a long time before picking up the spoon. Her hair is down, her robe unbelted. The fire casts a soft gold light across her face, and for the first time, she looks not powerful or distant, but simply tired. Not weak, just human. She lifts the spoon and takes the first bite. She chews slowly, swallows, then rests the spoon on the table, not in the bowl. That's new. She eats a second bite, this one smaller. Still no words, no gesture. Just a long pause while she looks past you at something only she can see. A third bite, then nothing. Spoon untouched, bowl still mostly full. She leans back slightly, closes her eyes, breathes in. The silence holds. You do not move. You do not speak. You know better. This is part of the ritual. Her final meal is not about fullness. It's about release. Historians still debate the meaning of this kind of exit. Whether Mongol queens simply retired in solitude, or stepped into spiritual roles, or vanished into the edge of the plains to become something else. Story, legend, wind. What you know is this. When a queen leaves, she does not pack. She does not announce. She eats one last meal, and then she walks. When she opens her eyes again, she meets yours. And for the first time in your life, she speaks your name. Just your name. Soft, even. Like it's been there in her mouth all along. Then she says, "This place is yours now." You do not cry. You nod. She stands, slowly, leaves the spoon behind, and then she walks out into the night. No horse, no cloak, just her. The tent flap swings. Once, twice, then stills. You wait. 1 minute, then 2. You walk to the place where she sat. You pick up the spoon. It's warm. The bowl is still half full. You cover it with a cloth and place it by the hearth. Not to be eaten, to be remembered. You spend the next hour cleaning. Not just dishes, everything. You sweep the floor 3 times. You polish the pots until your reflection stares back tired and startled. You fold every napkin, align every cup. You light the herbs she preferred, juniper and wild mint, and let the smoke curl into the ceiling like a farewell letter in a language only ghosts read. No one enters the tent. No one dares. Outside, the camp remains hushed. A dog barks once. A baby cries, is hushed. The stars wheel overhead, indifferent. You sit by the fire until the coals settle, until the heat fades, until the spoon cools in your hand. Then you rise. You wrap the spoon in a strip of wool and tuck it beneath the floorboard, where only you will know to find it. You make tea, her blend light and smoky, and drink it with slow sips, letting each swallow carry a piece of the night into your bones. The final taste is sharp, sweet, and gone. Tomorrow they will ask where she went. You will shrug. You will say only what is true, that she left after dinner, that she ate 3 bites, that she said your name, that her place is warm, that her silence lingers. But you will not say the rest, that she looked more like the sky than a ruler, that her voice was smaller than a whisper, but larger than the camp, that you felt for a moment the entire weight of her memory rest on your shoulders like a second robe. The fire dies down. You place the bowl in a corner, let it cool completely. You sleep nearby, wrapped in the scent of ash and rice. And when you dream, it is not of queens or courts or feasts. It is of footsteps fading across dry grass, of breath rising into the sky, of a spoon left behind like a story not finished but paused. You will rise before dawn. You will light the fire again. You will cook something simple. You will serve it well. And though she is gone, every movement you make will echo hers. Every flavor will hold her shape. You are not her, but you are next. And the kitchen remembers. The fire is low now, and the camp has gone quiet, not with fear or exhaustion, but with a kind of peaceful exhale that follows something truly finished. You're sitting alone in the kitchen tent, the same tent you've stepped into every morning before the light came, the one that smells like old herbs and familiar wood smoke, and the faintest trace of memory steeped into wool. The queen's place is still set, though you know she won't be returning tonight. Maybe not tomorrow either. The spoon is gone, the cloth is folded, and the bowl she last touched sits upside down to dry, as if it too is resting. Your hands are still, your body heavy but not tense, like the weight has finally found the right place to settle. There is nothing left to stir, nothing left to slice. Just this moment, stretching gently across the coals, and it is enough. Outside, the wind moves through the tall grass with soft fingers, brushing past the tents like a lullaby. A child coughs in the distance. Someone clears their throat, but otherwise the camp has fallen into that deep stillness where thought begins to loosen and sleep begins to bloom. You close your eyes, and you remember, not the grandest moments, not the firelit councils or the royal feasts, or the slow tension of negotiations played out with bowls and bites. You remember the way she folded her napkin when no one watched, the way her thumb rested lightly on the edge of her teacup, the single time she laughed, truly laughed, when the stew boiled over and splattered across her robe, and she looked down and said simply, "It was ready." You remember the quiet, the way silence could stretch and curve and hum like a drumskin pulled tight between two fingers. You remember how many times you stood with your breath held, waiting for the queen to eat that first bite, to set the tone for everything that came next. How much meaning lived in that spoon. You also remember the smells, the sour tang of curd drying on stones, the sweetness of barley browning in the pan, the rich bloom of lamb fat melting into broth. These were not just meals, they were sentences, chosen carefully, cooked slowly, spoken without words. The queen taught you that food could be a language and silence its grammar. And now, in the after of her absence, in the hush of this slow night, you understand that she was not only feeding a court, a tribe, or an empire. She was feeding time itself, anchoring it with flavor and rhythm and repetition, so that people could remember not just what happened, but how it felt. You lean back against the cushion and let your body grow heavier. The coals glow orange and red, a pulse in the dark. You feel the heat on your shins and think, perhaps you could sleep here tonight. The queen's rules no longer bind you, but they still live in your bones. You do not speak. You do not rise. You let the stillness do its work. And as you sit there, something shifts, soft, small, but real. A calmness curling beneath your ribs, threading into your breath. You've done what you were meant to do. You've remembered well. The queen is gone, but her memory lingers in every spice jar, every wooden spoon, every flicker of firelight that casts shadows in the shape of her hands. Tomorrow will come, and with it more meals, more decisions, more guests who do not know the old customs. But you will. And when they sit to eat, you will serve them in silence. You will curve the meat with moon-shaped cuts. You will choose when to add garlic, when to withhold it. You will decide how much salt speaks and when vinegar should burn the tongue. You will keep the stories alive, not with speeches, with meals. And maybe, years from now, someone will remember this moment, the one you're in now, the bowl on the shelf, the fire in your chest, the softness of the queen's final nod. You open your eyes. The coals have dimmed. The sky outside is ink blue, and the stars are sharp enough to draw lines between. You breathe once more, slowly, deeply. You are no longer just a servant. You are the memory keeper, the one who tasted history and turned it back into breath. And now, finally, you are ready to sleep. You lay down, the woven mat rough beneath your shoulder blades, your blanket warm with a scent of ash and wool. The tent rustles faintly as the wind passes through, soft and slow. The world does not need you to move now. It only needs you to rest, to carry this stillness a little further, to keep it warm until morning. So sleep now quietly, gently, with the fire low and your breath even. You have stirred enough. You have served well. Let the night have you. Let it fold around you like smoke. Let it hold you like memory. Let it all fall away. You are safe. You are still. You are home.